You know what's funny? People think discipline is loud. They think it's motivation speeches, early mornings posted on Instagram, cold showers, pain, hustle noise. But the truth, real discipline is quiet. It doesn't scream. It doesn't beg for attention. It doesn't need applause. It just shows up every single day. And that's exactly why most people miss it. Because in a world addicted to excitement, discipline feels like nothing. No thrill, no instant reward, just repetition and silence. But here's the joke, the same thing you ignore, the same boring, quiet discipline. That's the thing slowly deciding who wins and who stays stuck. So today, I'm not here to motivate you. I'm here to show you something much darker, the silent power of self-discipline, the one no one talks about. Because once you see it, you can't unsee it. Discipline doesn't announce itself when it enters your life. It doesn't come with excitement, applause, or recognition. Most of the time, it feels almost invisible. You wake up early when no one is watching. You do the work even when you don't feel like it. You choose the harder option when the easier one is right in front of you. There's no immediate reward, no instant validation, and no dramatic moment where everything suddenly changes. It's just quiet effort, repeated again and again, often unnoticed. That silence is exactly why people underestimate it. In a world that celebrates loud success, flashy wins, and quick results, discipline feels too ordinary to matter. People are drawn to motivation because it feels powerful in the moment. It gives a temporary rush, a sense that something big is about to happen. But motivation fades quickly, and when it disappears, most people stop. Discipline, on the other hand, doesn't depend on how you feel. It operates in the background, steady and consistent, whether you're inspired or not. The real power of discipline shows up over time. It builds slowly, almost secretly, like something growing beneath the surface. At first, the changes are small. You become a little more focused, a little more consistent, a little more in control. These changes are so subtle that you might not even notice them. But as days turn into weeks and weeks turn into months, those small actions begin to stack. They compound into something much bigger than you expected. What makes it powerful is that while it feels quiet to you, its results are anything but quiet. One day, people start noticing the difference. They see your progress, your confidence, your results, and it seems sudden to them. They think you changed overnight. They think you got lucky or found some secret shortcut. But what they don't see is the long period of silence where nothing looked impressive, where everything felt repetitive and slow. Discipline also changes how you see yourself. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, even a small one, you build trust within your own mind. You stop relying on external pressure or temporary feelings. You start knowing that you can do what needs to be done, even when it's uncomfortable. That internal shift is powerful because it doesn't depend on circumstances. It stays with you regardless of what's happening around you. At the same time, discipline quietly removes the chaos from your life. Instead of reacting to every impulse, every distraction, and every mood, you begin to move with intention. You become less controlled by emotions and more guided by decisions. This doesn't happen all at once. It's a gradual process, almost unnoticeable day by day, but over time it creates a level of stability and control that most people never reach. The reason its results become loud is because they eventually show up in every area of your life. Your work improves, your habits strengthen, your mindset sharpens. Opportunities begin to appear, not because of luck, but because you've prepared yourself to handle them. People start to respect you, not because you demand it, but because your actions speak for you. And that's the paradox. The quieter the discipline, the louder the outcome. The less attention it demands in the moment, the more impact it creates in the long run. It doesn't need recognition while it's happening, because its real reward comes later, when the results are undeniable and impossible to ignore. Comfort feels harmless at first. It doesn't look like a threat. In fact, it feels like something you've earned. Rest, ease, convenience, these things seem natural, even necessary. And they are, to a certain extent. But the problem begins when comfort stops being a tool and starts becoming a default. When every decision you make is guided by what feels easy instead of what actually moves you forward, something slowly starts to shift inside you. You begin to avoid resistance. Not consciously, not intentionally, but subtly. You choose to delay instead of act. You pick distractions over focus. You tell yourself you'll start later when you feel more ready, more motivated, more in the mood. And in that moment, it feels justified. It feels like a small choice. But these small choices start to repeat, and repetition turns them into patterns. Comfort trains your mind in ways you don't immediately notice. It teaches you that effort is optional. That discomfort is something to escape from. That challenges can wait. Over time, your tolerance for difficulty decreases. Things that once felt manageable start to feel overwhelming. Tasks that require focus begin to feel heavier than they should. It's not that you've become weaker overnight, it's that you've slowly stopped practicing strength. At the same time, comfort creates an illusion of progress. You stay busy but not productive. You consume more than you create. You think about your goals, maybe even talk about them, but you don't move toward them with real consistency. And because you're not completely inactive, it's easy to convince yourself that you're still on track, that nothing is really wrong, that you'll catch up eventually. But discipline and comfort don't coexist for long. Every time you choose comfort over discipline, you weaken your ability to control yourself. You give more power to your impulses, your moods, your temporary desires. You become reactive instead of intentional. And once that pattern sets in, it becomes harder to break. Not because it's impossible, but because your mind has adapted to the easier path. There's also a deeper cost that most people ignore. Comfort slowly disconnects you from your potential. You start settling without realizing it. You lower your standards just enough to stay comfortable. You stop pushing your limits. Stop exploring what you're truly capable of. And over time, that gap between who you are and who you could be starts to widen. What makes comfort dangerous is how quiet it is. It doesn't destroy you in one dramatic moment. It doesn't force you to notice its impact. Instead, it works slowly, patiently, shaping your habits, your mindset, and your identity without drawing attention to itself. By the time you realize what's happening, you're already used to it. It feels normal. It feels like who you are. Breaking away from comfort requires awareness first. You have to start noticing the small decisions, the moments where you choose ease over effort, not to judge yourself, but to understand the pattern. Because once you see it clearly, it becomes harder to ignore. You begin to recognize that growth and comfort move in opposite directions. Choosing discipline means stepping into discomfort on purpose. It means doing things that don't feel good in the moment, but serve a bigger purpose. It means acting even when your mind looks for excuses. This doesn't mean rejecting comfort completely, but it does mean putting it in its place. Using it as recovery, not as a lifestyle. Over time, something shifts again, but this time in your favor. Your tolerance for difficulty increases. Challenges start to feel more manageable. Effort becomes more natural, and the same discomfort you once avoided begins to feel like progress instead of pain. Comfort promises safety, but often delivers stagnation. Discipline demands effort, but creates growth. And the longer you stay in comfort, the harder it becomes to leave, because what once felt like a choice slowly turns into a habit, and that habit begins to shape the direction of your entire life. Big changes rarely come from big moments. They come from small actions repeated so often that they stop feeling important. That's why most people overlook them. A single day of effort doesn't seem like it matters. One good decision feels too small to count. One step forward looks insignificant compared to the distance ahead. So it's easy to ignore, easy to delay, easy to believe that real change requires something bigger, something dramatic. But your life doesn't move in giant leaps. It moves in patterns. What you do once might not matter, but what you do consistently becomes your reality. Every small action is like a vote. Not a loud one, not a final decision, but a quiet signal of who you are becoming. When you repeat that action, the signal gets stronger. Over time, those signals form an identity, and that identity shapes your future. The danger is that this works both ways. Just like positive actions build progress, negative ones build resistance. Skipping something once feels harmless. Choosing distraction instead of focus feels like a break. But when those choices repeat, they create a pattern just as powerful as discipline. The problem is, you don't see the results immediately. There's no instant consequence, no clear sign that something is going wrong. So the behavior continues, unnoticed and unchallenged. Small actions operate under the surface, where they quietly compound. One extra hour of focus each day doesn't change your life overnight, but over months, it turns into hundreds of hours of progress. One healthier choice doesn't transform your body instantly, but repeated daily, It reshapes your energy, your mindset, and your confidence. The same principle applies to learning habits, relationships, and every area of your life. The accumulation is slow, but the impact is massive. What makes this powerful is that it removes the need for perfection. You don't have to do everything at once. You don't need extreme bursts of effort to move forward. You just need consistency in the small things. Showing up when you don't feel like it. Doing a little more than yesterday. Sticking to simple actions long enough for them to matter. It doesn't look impressive in the moment, and that's exactly why most people give up. They expect quick results and lose patience when they don't see them. There's also a psychological shift that happens when you commit to small daily actions. You stop relying on intensity and start building stability. Instead of chasing motivation, you create structure. Instead of waiting for the perfect time, you act in imperfect moments. This builds confidence not from big wins, but from repeated proof that you can stay consistent, that you can follow through even when it's boring, even when it's slow. Over time, these actions start to connect. What once felt separate begins to form a system. Your habits support each other. Your progress in one area influences another. You become more focused, more disciplined, more aware of your choices. And suddenly, the future that once felt far away starts to feel closer, not because you rushed toward it, but because you built your way there, step by step. Most people underestimate how much their daily actions matter, because they're looking for immediate results. They want visible change, something they can measure quickly, but the real transformation happens in the background. It builds quietly, just like discipline, until it reaches a point where the results can no longer be ignored. At that stage, it looks like everything changed at once. It looks sudden from the outside, but in reality, it's the result of hundreds of small decisions stacking on top of each other. Decisions that seemed insignificant at the time, but together created something powerful. The future isn't shaped by what you intend to do. It's shaped by what you repeat. And those repetitions are built on small actions, taken daily, often unnoticed, but always moving you in a direction, whether you realize it or not. Control doesn't disappear all at once. It slips away in small moments and decisions that seem harmless at the time. You tell yourself it's just one delay, one distraction, one break. Nothing serious, nothing permanent. But those moments begin to stack, and slowly something shifts. You're no longer making decisions with intention. You're reacting, responding to whatever feels easiest, whatever demands the least effort in that moment. At first, it feels like freedom. Doing what you want when you want, without pressure or restriction. It feels natural to follow your mood, to listen to your impulses, to avoid discomfort whenever possible. But that kind of freedom is deceptive, because when you don't control yourself, something else starts to take control instead. Your habits begin to decide for you. Your environment starts shaping your actions. Your emotions take the lead, pulling you in different directions depending on how you feel. One day you're motivated, the next day you're not. One moment you're focused, the next you're distracted. There's no consistency, no stability, just a constant cycle of starting and stopping. This is where most people get stuck. Not because they lack ability, but because they lack control. They wait for the right feeling to act. They depend on motivation to carry them through. And when that feeling fades, everything falls apart. The problem isn't the absence of opportunity. It's the absence of discipline to act regardless of how they feel. When you don't take control of your actions, life fills that gap. Deadlines start controlling your pace. Pressure starts dictating your decisions. External expectations replace internal direction. You become reactive, constantly adjusting to what's happening around you instead of moving according to your own plan. There's also a deeper effect that's harder to notice. You begin to lose trust in yourself. Every time you say you'll do something and don't follow through, it creates a small crack in that trust. It might not feel significant in the moment, but over time, those cracks grow. You start doubting your own promises. You hesitate before committing to anything because somewhere in your mind, you're not sure you'll actually do it. On the other side of this is self-control. Not in an extreme or rigid way, but in a consistent, reliable way. It's the ability to act even when you don't feel like it. To make decisions based on what matters, not what's easy. To follow through even when there's no immediate reward. This kind of control doesn't restrict your life. It stabilizes it. It removes the chaos of constant indecision. It creates clarity because your actions are no longer based on temporary feelings. You begin to move with purpose, not impulse. It also changes how you handle challenges. Instead of avoiding them, you face them. Instead of waiting for the perfect moment, you create progress in imperfect conditions. You stop negotiating with yourself over every small task. You just do what needs to be done. The difference becomes clear over time. One path leads to inconsistency, frustration, and a sense of being stuck. The other leads to progress, confidence, and a sense of direction. Not because life becomes easier, but because you become more in control of how you respond to it. Most people think control is about restriction, about limiting freedom. But in reality, it's the opposite. When you can control yourself, you're no longer controlled by everything else. Your habits don't trap you, your emotions don't dictate you, and your environment doesn't define you. The absence of self-control doesn't feel like losing control immediately. It feels like comfort, like ease, like temporary relief. But over time, that ease turns into dependency, and that dependency starts shaping your decisions in ways you don't even realize. And by the time it becomes obvious, it's no longer about a single decision. It's about a pattern that has been building quietly, slowly taking control while you thought you were the one in charge. Motivation feels powerful in the moment. It hits you like a spark, sudden, intense, almost convincing you that everything is about to change. You feel ready, energized, focused. For a short time, it creates the illusion that you've already become the person you want to be. But that feeling doesn't last. It fades quietly, often faster than you expect, leaving you exactly where you started, only now with a little more frustration. That's the problem with relying on motivation. It's unpredictable. Some days it's there, strong and clear. Other days it's completely absent. And when your actions depend on it, your progress becomes inconsistent. You start when you feel good, and you stop when you don't. It turns your effort into something temporary, something that only exists under the right emotional conditions. Consistency works differently. It doesn't depend on how you feel in the moment. It doesn't require excitement or energy to function. It's built on repetition, on showing up regardless of your mood. That's why it feels less attractive at first. There's no rush, no intensity, no immediate reward. Just the same actions repeated over and over again, often without recognition. But that repetition is where the real power lies. Each time you act consistently, you strengthen a pattern. You make the behavior more automatic, less dependent on effort. Over time, what once required discipline starts to feel normal. It becomes part of your routine, something you do without constant resistance. Motivation might get you started, but it rarely gets you far. It pushes you in bursts, creating moments of action followed by long periods of inactivity. Consistency, on the other hand, creates momentum. It keeps you moving forward, even if the progress feels slow. And that steady movement adds up in ways that sudden bursts never can. There's also a shift in how you see progress. When you rely on motivation, you expect quick results. You look for visible change, something that proves your effort is working. And when you don't see it, you lose interest. Consistency removes that expectation. It teaches you to focus on the process instead of the outcome. To trust that the results will come, even if they're not immediate. This mindset reduces the pressure. You're no longer chasing perfection or dramatic improvement. You're simply showing up and doing the work. And that simplicity makes it easier to continue, even on difficult days. You don't need to feel ready. You don't need the perfect conditions. You just need to take the next step. Over time, consistency builds something deeper than progress. It builds reliability. You start to trust yourself, not because of what you intend to do, but because of what you repeatedly prove you can do. That trust becomes a foundation. It gives you confidence, not based on emotions, but on evidence. It also creates discipline without forcing it. Instead of constantly pushing yourself, you create a system that carries you forward. Your habits take over, reducing the need for constant decision-making. You no longer waste energy debating whether to act. You act because it's what you always do. The contrast becomes clear when you look at the long term. Motivation creates spikes, short periods of high effort followed by drops. Consistency creates a steady line of progress, less exciting but far more effective. One relies on feeling, the other relies on commitment. What makes consistency stronger is its ability to work in silence. It doesn't need attention. It doesn't need validation. It continues whether anyone notices or not. And because of that, it builds results that last, not just temporary improvements that disappear when the feeling fades. The real shift happens when you stop chasing motivation and start valuing consistency. When you understand that progress isn't about how intense your effort is, but how often you repeat it. When you accept that the boring, repetitive actions are the ones that actually move you forward. And once that shift happens, everything becomes more stable. Your progress becomes predictable. Your habits become stronger. And your results stop depending on whether you feel like it. Because you've built something that works even when you don't.